Clark, you have the floor.
Clark Trammell, running for District 6 City Council. I started this campaign a couple of years ago when I met a number of you when I was out here running for mayor. And the seat that I'm really looking for is to sit on the city council. My background is in banking, business, entrepreneurialism, transportation, and economic development. Broad-based, deep, and experienced. I want to bring those skills and my background of activism in this community to the table at the city council to assist it to make not only good decisions, but the right decisions, communicate them well, and reflect my experience to give leadership, collaboration, and partnership within this community. We have a lot of things that need to be done, and I don't have a minute and a half to tell you about 2 hours worth of issues, but they're there, and we'll talk about it if you have questions about it. But my focus is on you, District 6 in the city, and I know we're out here in the east side of town, and I've been very active out here with your NIA. I understand your problems, I understand the culture in this part of the community. I do that throughout the city. I've been involved with a lot of NIA, sat on the TNTA board, started the Kansas Ballet Academy, wrote their policies and procedures, and I've done a lot of other activities involved in the community for the community. So I'm here to let you know about me, and I'm ready to do this job. Thank you.
Lucas?
Hi there, everyone. Give it a 10 more second, please. I'm June.
Ready?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucas Ryan, and I'm also running for District 6. I grew up here in Topeka. My mom is a counselor with 501, and I grew up at 501 schools. While growing up at those schools, I was kind of fed this narrative that if I wanted to do anything with my life, I had to get the hell out of Topeka. And I don't think that that's a good idea anymore, but at the time, my wife and I kind of bought into that toxic idea and moved to Kansas City. We were there for a year and a half, and that's when it really started to sink in how great of a city Topeka was that we had just left. The opportunity cost was just so much lower here. So 2.5 years ago, we moved back. We bought our house over at 17th and Campbell, and started to find ways to get more involved with the community. Since then, I have served on the boards for Hope Through Headphones, a nonprofit that grew out of a student organization. I'm on the board for the Capital City Equality Center. I served on the Strengthening Police and Community Partnerships Council, and have really found any way I can to kind of roll up my sleeves and do some work in this community. It's because I believe that the people here deserve a little bit better than we give them a lot of the time. And that as long as we're invested in this community and are willing to do the work, we can see a much more sustainable, much more growth-oriented, and much more positive community for all of us. That's in a little nutshell.
Okay. Hannah?
Ready whenever you are. My name is Hannah Nager, neigh like a horse, girl like a tiger, and I am running for District 6. I grew up here in Topeka. My parents originally moved here in the 80s and made it a very big part of our lives growing up, that when you are growing up in a community that gives so much to you, you give back. And it's in that spirit that I moved back to Topeka. I'm a dentist here in town. I'm at 28th and Farallon, and I live in District 6 near 15th and Oakley. Growing up, volunteering was always a very, very big part of my family and our values. And my parents were very involved in their NIA. They helped write grants for the neighborhood of Ward Mead. And when we moved into District 6, that was also a very big part of giving back to the community that gives so much to us. I have been very involved in different volunteering opportunities since I've been back in Topeka. I served on the Topeka Performing Arts Center board and ran Grape Escape last year. I have been a part of many initiatives in trying to educate voters and also get good feedback. So we are serving the community as best as we can from the government side of view. And I want to continue doing that by running and hopefully being elected as the city councilor of District 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamika, District 2.
Ready? Hello, everybody. I'm Tamika Terry. I am a candidate running for District 2. for City Council that includes the Oakland and North Topeka and the northeastern part of Topeka. I came to Topeka by way of adoption. I was born in New York, the state of New York. Once I arrived here, I already had a loss for a sense of identity. As I grew up throughout the Topeka public school system, I developed my character. I have an energy and I've always been a people person. I have 3 beautiful girls and I teach them the same that I was taught. Be yourself, be unique, always offer something, and always learn to give back. The mother that raised me raised 30 adoptive children from diverse backgrounds. She grew up and survived the Civil War era. We have some of those same issues that we're living in today. What I want to bring is energy, fresh new faces, ideas, and a strong leadership discipline to the City Council. What is that going to take? Ideas like mine combined with yours, as well as the citizens of District 2 that have been forgotten, because there is light in the midst of darkness, and we have our blighted communities. I've seen it, I've lived it, I can relate. I want to be your best representative in that light to shine for you all. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Will Pope. I'm also running for District 2, which includes North Topeka, Oakland, and East Topeka North. I grew up in North Topeka. I lived in Oakland on Sumner Street during college, and I'm back in North Topeka about a couple blocks from downtown Nodo. I left Topeka about a decade ago because our economy was so bad and we didn't have jobs here. And I joined a conservation corps, and that led to work in the National Park Service. I've lived in Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Glacier National Park, at the ocean, Cape Lookout National Seashore, the Lyndon B. Johnson Ranch, and Kansas' own park, Nicodemus National Historic Site in western Kansas, which is a historic all-black pioneer town. I moved back to Topeka because I wanted to. I had never wanted to leave, but I did want to come back because this is home to me. And coming back, having gathered all those perspectives, I see that we have a lot of good things here, but we also have a lot that we need to change. Topeka has been stagnant for a long time. We've lost population 7 years in a row. Our current population is within a couple hundred of where we were in 1970, and it's not going to change unless we change our approach to managing the city. I'm tired of seeing the failure here in Topeka, and I'm running because our communities have been forgotten, our neighborhoods have been neglected, and we need to turn Topeka around.
Okay. So I'm going to reverse order here. Will, I'm going to let you take the first question. I have a couple questions that came in about TIFs, so I'm going to get at least one of them in. So, this question is directed at each candidate that I give this question to. How do you feel about the TIF issue, which is on downtown right now? Are you in favor of the proposed downtown TIF? Why or why not? 1 minute.
I think I've spoken out about the TIF more than any other candidate. I am not in favor of it. The downtown TIF, which would go from the river to 17th Street, would take all future increases in property tax revenue for those valuable downtown properties and put it into a special fund, which they would use to rebuild downtown. Well, that's great if you're downtown, but we still need money to run our city, our county, our school district. Every taxing authority would be losing out on future revenue if we pass that downtown TIF. It would rob from school children, it would rob from Washburn University, and it would mean that you and I are going to be paying more property taxes in the future. So the downtown TIF is a bad idea for Topeka. I support fair economic conditions for everybody, and the school board needs to be watching out, and they need to fight this downtown TIF.
Tamika, same question. You need me to restate it?
Please.
Okay. In general, how do you feel about the TIF issue downtown? Are you in favor of the proposed downtown TIF? Why or why not? 1 minute.
I was also present in the city council meetings when they brought the TIF issue to the table. I am an honest person because I want the people of my district in the city of Topeka to trust me. I didn't know a lot about TIF. In fact, I didn't even know what it stood for. But it's a tax increment financing. I'm not in favor of it. Why? Because I think it should also include further boundaries within there. North Topeka is a historical area. Why wouldn't that be included? Chicago did the TIF district. They have a Navy pier. We don't have a Navy pier. We have a Worlds of Fun, but that's in another city. That involves highway toll, driving gas. A lot of families aren't at that income to afford to do that. I am not in favor of it, and I hope we reevaluate it until it's more transparent and equitable for all the families to have a say-so in that. And it's fair to the business owners and the property owners that are currently downtown.
Hannah, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Do I need to restate it?
Yes, please.
Okay. In general, how do you feel about the TIF issue downtown? Are you in favor of the proposed downtown TIF, or why not?
I would like to have further time to look at the downtown TIF to make sure that I understand all of the ins and outs of it. TIFs are something that can be used as a helpful tool, but should not be used as a crutch for government. We need to make sure that as government, we're more focused on creating a sense of place instead of being the people to run business. Because really, entrepreneurs are the best at that job. We don't want government getting in the way of that. However, if there are ways that government can go ahead and make sure that certain, sorry, got hyped up. Making sure that we are reinvesting in our community in appropriate ways and making sure that businesses have the opportunity to not only improve their own business, but the community around them. We should be open to using tools like that.
Lucas, same question.
Same thing?
Do I need
All
to
right.
repeat it?
No, we're good. So I actually have a more thorough analysis of tax increment financing than I have time for right now as a podcast episode up on my website. So if you want to know more about that than this little snippet, feel free to go look at that. But in short, I feel like the TIF district being discussed for downtown is an attempt to use a very good tool for the wrong problem. One of the things that TIFs are is a way to revitalize infrastructure and just pure property redevelopment. And while downtown has its infrastructure problems, the biggest issue with downtown isn't a lack of building space, it's a lack of interest in filling the rental space we have and a lack of the soft parts of an economy. People aren't walking around downtown at 6:30 on a Tuesday night looking for a place to go eat. And a TIF isn't going to fix that. But in order for the restaurants that are being developed, in order for the economy to survive down there, we have to invest on the soft side. And so I'm reluctant on the TIF because I think it's the wrong tool.
Clark, same question. Okay.
There's 4 other people up here besides me, so I'll go ditto, 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 and not drag you all through that dialogue again. Having been a banker for over 40 years, I understand financing, all sorts of financing. TIF, I think there's been some things said here that if we had time, I'd put some corrections on, because I don't think they're quite under the hood of what we're talking about. TIF can be a good process if it's understood, but I think by what you heard here, including the city, there's a lot of confusion about what a TIF is and how the TIF is applicable not only to downtown, but to anywhere. So would we have the same prosperity downtown without the TIF is the question as to whether the TIF financing should be offered. I think it needs more dialogue, needs more discussion, and it certainly needs to be understood by the decision makers and then communicated to us so we can support it or have dialogue with it.
Okay, next question. Let's take that hop. All right. Let's see. Okay, you went first. Hannah, let's have you go first this time. And we'll move down the road. The question is, what is your stance on a pit bull ordinance? Hannah.
We received an email earlier this week about the pit bull ordinance, and I think maybe the week before that too. That is something that is definitely facing this community, and we need to go ahead and investigate as a community. Make sure that we're moving in a direction that is making our community a safer place, educating others, and making sure that animals are being taken care of in appropriate ways. It is not something that I've run into a lot in our district, so I'm not as knowledgeable on this situation as others, but it is something that we do need to look forward, because there is no city council at large person, it is an issue that we need to discuss as a community and as an entire council. And so it is incumbent upon every city council member to go ahead and educate themselves on issues like this, even though they do affect maybe a narrower scope of our citizens.
Lucas, same question.
Sure thing. When it comes to a pit bull specific ordinance, I'm reluctant to look at breed specific language. Because for me, looking at the history of this issue compared to other issues of animal related incidents and injuries, it's not the animal breed itself, it's more the conditions that the animal is being raised in, the way that the owner is containing the animal, its ability to stay on the leash, things like that. So while I don't support a breed-specific ordinance, I do think that there is an issue with the way that we have our current animal code, and I would be willing to look into that to investigate how we can restructure it. But that said, I don't think that singling out a specific breed is going to actually solve the problem. Otherwise, this rhetoric wouldn't have been repeated with Mastiffs and Great Danes and several other breeds throughout history, because it's kind of always been around over the decades, and we're looking at a much more holistic approach.
Clark, same question. You need me to repeat it?
No. I receive Betty Phillips emails about pit bulls, so everybody in here that knows Betty that's in her chain of network knows the issues that are over here resident in this area of town. I'm going to agree with what Lucas said to this point. I'm going to pick it up where I think if we had better enforcement of dealing with animals on the loose of any sort and taking care of the safety and care of our streets relative to the problem that we're identifying as a pit bull problem, resolves a lot of the concerns we have under this category called pit bulls. Maybe it should be called wild animals, pets, because raccoons bite also, so do possums. We got a lot of dangerous four-legged creatures out there, but we need to pay attention to the codes and the protective devices we have to make sure our streets and our communities are safe.
Will, same question.
You know, I lived in Yellowstone National Park. They've got black bears, they've got grizzly bears there. Grizzly bears are much more dangerous than black bears, and pit bulls are much more dangerous than a lot of different types of dogs. That said, I've walked through North Topeka and Oakland and a lot of East Topeka. I've hit almost 5,000 houses. We have a lot of pit bulls in our district. I've been chased by a couple of them while I've been out walking. And we got to think, why do people have these pit bulls? It's because we don't have security in our neighborhoods, and people use these to protect their property when they're not at home. And you know, if we had safer conditions in our neighborhoods, you know, maybe there wouldn't be as many. But people do have them for security, and I think they have that right, as long as they're keeping them caged up and they're not letting them loose. So as long as they're properly managing their dogs, I'm in favor of them having them.
Tamika?
I too received the email from Ms. Betty, and I think it's important to revisit because we're seeing another reoccurrence of fatalities amongst our children with this breed-specific animal. I'm not saying that every pit bull is a horrible, horrible dog, because they're not. Just like every Rottweiler's not, just like every Terrier's not. And I want to agree with what Lucas said. I think we need to just investigate and go into what it is that citizens want as far as their public health and safety concerns are regarding this breed that is being brought up once again. We want to just be mindful that if the fatalities weren't being brought up, there wouldn't be a need for the concern. I know that there's been a couple of specific pit bulls that have been running loose. It's school-age children that are being chased, terrified. It's not what we need in our city. They've also migrated downtown. And we need to revisit the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Next question is about enforcing our codes. Clark, I'll let you start off with this one. Will you advocate to enforce the housing codes? Basically, this question is maintenance codes on residents and commercial buildings. Will you be an advocate or not?
I'm an advocate for enforcing codes, period, as long as they're good codes. In this area, we have a lot of work to do in this community to get our codes right. They're old, they're stale, and they're ineffective in many ways, and they're not efficient. We've got the police doing code work that they shouldn't be doing, that the code enforcement officers should. But we're limited with staff to where these guys are so backed up in their workload that they can't get out and do their job effectively. So if the answer to this is we got to go back to step one, revise our codes so they're correct, effective, put an organization under the city in place that can administer and service those codes effectively. And then, yes, our inner cities need code enforcement. We just have to follow the rules and do it consistently and fairly. And don't ask somebody in the winter to paint their house. Give them the time to paint it when it's spring, when the weather's warm. We've got to be smart and sensible of how we apply the codes in enforcement.
Will, same question.
Code enforcement, we do need it. We've got a lot of blight in District 2 in North Topeka and Oakland and East Topeka. We don't need to be going after the owners who are pillars of their neighborhoods, who are trying to keep their property up. Those shouldn't be the first target that we have. We should go after the derelict properties that have been decaying and falling apart first. They should be our top priority. I think we should classify properties according to how decayed they are, go after the worst first, and then we can look at the other ones. But we do need to have code enforcement. Clark's right, we may need to look at a few codes, and we definitely need more people working in code enforcement, because one officer covering all of North Topeka and Ward Meade, one officer covering all of Oakland is not enough. We also need more work crews, and I've suggested solutions for that, because being behind on mowing and having grass that's 5 or 6 feet tall is not acceptable in Topeka.
Tamika, same question.
Will you repeat the question?
Yes, I will.
please? Thank you.
Will you be an advocate to enforce the city code on maintenance and housing?
I only asked to repeat the question because the question here is, will I be an advocate? Yes, I will. If I wasn't going to be an advocate, I wouldn't be running for city council. We are also advocates for the people's voices on what's right, what's wrong. They want to know why their neighbors aren't being held accountable to their codes. Well, we're the ones that need to go to the proper authorities and the departments to say, do we have a code in place for this? Who's responsible to make sure that it's being abided by? There's been a neglect. In my opinion, I feel there's too many of the same individuals wearing too many hats, and there's some of your responsibilities are being neglected. So yes, I will be an advocate to uphold the codes. That helps with the aesthetics and the look of our city to make it a beautiful capital city. Thank you.
Hannah, same question.
I think Tamika hit it on the head. If I wasn't for code enforcement, I wouldn't be running. We do need to make sure that we are supporting our city and making sure that these codes are enforced, making sure that community members are able to quickly and promptly report any violations that they do see, and that they're followed up well. I was a part of a team that went over to Ripley Park in the surrounding area, and we went around and we door to door and we asked people, what are you seeing? What are you most frustrated with? And what they talked about was code enforcement, making sure that their neighbors were taking care of their yards, taking care of their property, because it was bringing down blight on the entire neighborhood. And then we followed up with See, Click, Fix, making sure that it was an effective program. And we went back with data, and it improved the program to be more responsive and more effective.
Lucas, same question.
So I agree, first off, with that whole advocacy or I wouldn't be running statement. I think that's a given for all of us up here. But I currently hold a real estate license in the state of Kansas and formerly practiced real estate here in Topeka. There was a time where I walked into a house that was listed. It was next to my mother's house, and for years we had hated this house. And I walked into this house that was listed and almost fell through the floor on every floor of the house. So we walk out and I call code enforcement and say, hey, this house isn't fit for habitation. It's in violation of 100 different codes. Garage burnt down with a meth lab exploded while I was in middle school. What can you do about it? And code enforcement told me that they couldn't do anything without the consent of the property owner and hung up on me. For me, that's absolutely unacceptable. And so not only am I going to advocate for enforcing our codes, but making sure that transparency is brought to that system and that when code violations are reported, it's actually followed up on and taken care of.
Okay. Lucas, you're going to get the first question of this round. What specific points are you going to state for economic development? In other words, what plan do you have for economic development in Topeka?
Sure. I subscribe to a political philosophy that I kind of call pragmatic governance. And it's this idea that government should be investing for you. Your tax dollars aren't just being spent for the sake of being spent. They're being invested in the community to create social, economic, and positive return for you. For me, that means that things like the Metro Bike program are economic development incentives because it creates good economic return for people who wouldn't be able to get to their job or to the grocery store without it. So I believe in a holistic approach. Right now, Topeka has a very unbalanced economy. It's all over on Wanamaker, and most of it's not over here, which isn't healthy for any of the city. So if we're going to be using policies like TIF districts or CIDs, those policies shouldn't necessarily be used at 29th and Wanamaker when we don't have a tax increment financing district on the east side of town. I can't say exactly that I would endorse a tax increment financing district over here. Right now, I'm still kind of out on more of those just because of city health, but I do think that we need to be leveling the economy.
Anna, same question.
For economic development, we've had a lot of studies in the past few years, including Momentum 2022, in ways that we can strategize how we're going to go ahead and invest our tax dollars, making sure that we get the most out of what the community has to invest. And something that we do need to make sure is that we are spreading out economic development and also lifting up blighted areas. An area that really needs focus is the White Lakes area, making sure that it isn't a place that is not just left behind. In that same sort of vein, we do need to make sure that other areas of town don't fall behind before they even get a chance to recover, looking at the mall in that case. But we need to make sure that we are also spreading that economic development across town, making sure that it is coming to the east side of Topeka and the north side of Topeka, so people do not feel forgotten because they will be the center of our attention.
Clark, same question.
Sitting here shaking my head, there are so many subparts to this, you can't answer it in a minute and a half.
Right.
No, 1 minute.
Now I've got a minute, so I've used 10 seconds of it. Economic development has always been an underpinning operation here in Topeka. It just doesn't surface effectively in many ways. I sat with Go Topeka and ran their small business program. I created about 300 jobs with entrepreneurs, created 50 new companies back when I was cleaning up that program for the chamber. And I started 3 new companies, and I will tell you there are ways to do this. Spot incubation, incubate downtown, do things that are creative, more education, more micro and macro financing tools. Change the structure of the Joint Economic Development Organization that spends your half-cent sales tax dollar that all of us, any of us get on city council. We are going to be responsible for that job also. And you've got to understand how to grow a community. You've got to constantly review the term economic development because times change and the focus of what that definition is changes. We need to do a better job of doing the job.
Well, you did it in a minute.
Well, not really.
Well, your question.
The Go Topeka was established in 2000 as the growth organization of Topeka. They were intended to create growth. It hasn't happened. They give out corporate incentives, and we're basically paying corporate welfare to these big companies. Recently, we gave $200,000 to Hill's Pet Food to create 6 new jobs. Their finance director is on the board of Go Topeka. We gave $1.5 million to another company. He's on a Greater Topeka Partnership board too. You know what? We need to do away with the corporate welfare. We need to create fair economic conditions in our city. Topeka has been stagnant for a long time. The best thing we can do is transformational change, merging city and county government, which would reduce the mill levy by, who knows, 15, 20 mil. It would be more efficient government, and that would stimulate growth because it would create the conditions that we need in Topeka to develop new industry and attract new business. It would make it much cheaper, and we'd have much more wealth created in the capital city.
To me, the same question.
For economic development, like Clark said, we will be on the Joint Economic Development Committee. At that time, we can better know, for those that are new to banking and corporate financing and taxing, on how to develop ideas that are comparable and equitable for all individuals on every level of their income. There is a difference that anyone sees on the west side versus the north side versus the south side, the central side. A lot of things are changing as far as technology. A lot of shopping is being done online. So for economic development, we need to see what we can do to actually still provide those services, shopping experiences, to those that aren't on the World Wide Web, and still bring that income to the city of Topeka.
Okay. Let's start with you on this question, Tamika. Now this is kind of interesting, so let me paraphrase it. Are you willing to research the issues that come up, or will you just be going to vote based on the opinions already held?
I have never been one to go by hearsay or what someone else has told me. That's a common problem in our churches. It's a common problem that we teach our children. You go and you research for yourself, because you get it from the horse's mouth, as my mother would say, and that way you do your own thinking. You do what's best to bring to your other constituents what the issues are and how it can be resolved in an equitable manner that's fair to all persons. It's just not something that I would ever consider. Is you take something and you don't do the research and you work yourself. You have to do the work yourself, the research, the studying. Right now, as a single parent, I have to work. I have to take care of my priorities, but I also have to do the work to run a campaign, and that says a lot to the character and to what I would do for situations like that.
Will, same question.
I'm a big fan of research, right? I'm in a PhD program right now. We do research, we look at the facts, we look at the academic studies, we make sure that the decisions that we're making are research-based. So I'm a big fan of research. And I brought it to the attention of the city council that they need to do more research on this downtown TIF district. You know, the studies show that when you put these TIF districts in place, it doesn't actually create new wealth in the community. What it does is it moves wealth around. So if you create a TIF district downtown, you're probably not going to bring new economic activity to Topeka. What you're going to do is you're going to move it from a different side of town, and we don't need to lose any more economic activity on the east side of town or the north side of town or in Oakland or in any of these neighborhoods that have been forgotten. We need to do research on these big issues that are affecting our community before we make votes, and I hope the city council is doing their research right now.
Going to you, Hannah. Same question. Need me to repeat it?
Nope, we're good.
Okay.
Absolutely, I will do my research. Part of that research is making sure that we're reaching out to the citizens and knowing what they really, really want. An issue that we're facing in District 6 right now is the development of 12th Street. Everybody wants to see millions of dollars of investment go into a road that truly needs it, but there's disagreement in how we want to go about that, and so there's been lots of discussion, and that's very, very important. It's also very important that our elected officials rise above any of kind of that hearsay that's happening online that's so easy to fall into. We do need to get straight to the facts and understand the data that's before us. Understand how that data can make our city a better place and how we can best implement it. By doing our research, we can be better servants for you guys and better represent and act out what we need for a community.
Lucas?
I'm a political science student right now at Washburn. I spend most of my free nights reading economic papers or some other kind of policy analysis. So I've got my fair amount of research. But the part that I want to speak to of this question is more whether or not we'll put our opinions aside for that research, because I think that's really the important part here. Because that's essential. If we aren't able to take our opinion and put it away for a little bit and do what's right for city government, then it doesn't matter that we had the opinion. Opinions are dimes a dozen. And I think that everybody up here can read an economic study or go out and do the research. And I grew up with Pam McComas as my debate teacher over at Topeka High, and one of the first things that she drilled into us was being able to debate both sides of the issue. Because if we weren't able to suspend our own beliefs on it, then we'd never get to the best answer. And so for me, that's the part of this question that matters, is yes, I will take myself out of the equation, even if I don't want 12th Street to go to one lane, to make sure that it matters.
Clark? Same question.
The answer to the question is yes. Part of the problem we've had over the history of the city council it's not degrading anybody, it's just a fact, is we have part-time people doing full-time jobs, and they've allowed the city staff to tell them what the answer is, and then they vote for it, rather than coming to the table with the knowledge to understand their right or wrong and to integrate their thought process into that decision. I bring my 45 years of experience that I shared with you to the table to assist with that decision-making and to stop these circular conversations and take those conversations someplace with the right dialogue, with the right information, and the right data. Data is acceptable, but if you have an understanding, the experience to use that data, what the data tells you to do, but what the overall picture reflects that you should be done are two different things. Experience brings the other half of that equation to the table with the data. So yes, we need to know what we're doing, and we need to be able to make smart decisions.
We've got time for a couple more questions. Let's go with Will on this one, start with. Do you believe we can increase city worker productivity and efficiencies, and the example is street repairs?
I do. I think we can increase all of our departmental efficiency. You know, I studied organizational leadership. A big part of organizational productivity is how well the employees feel about their job. Are they happy with their work? Are they bought into their mission? And I propose that we need to do a city employee workplace satisfaction survey every year to get the data on what's going on inside the departments. Because if our police aren't happy, if our fire aren't happy, if our road crews aren't happy, we need to make changes within those departments to improve the culture. I do think we can improve road work efficiency. I've worked on a road crew for the National Park Service. I know what it takes to pour concrete and pour asphalt. I would like to go on a ride along and see how they're doing it and maybe bring a different perspective. These are professionals, but I want to see what the culture is like, and I want to see what their conditions are like that they're working in.
Clark, same question.
We absolutely have capacity in the city staff. A couple of meetings ago, I attend all the city council meetings. Bill Fylander got up and made a comment about how we were doing more permits with the same staff. It was twice as much work. And I got up behind him and I said, see, Bill, you just proved the point. The city staff can do more with less. Potholes is the question. We haven't done a lousy job with potholes. We've done a lousy job with street repairs. I think we all know that. And if you look at what the county does, the county fixes a pothole to where it'll last at least 2 to 3 years. We fix a pothole so it'll last for about 20 or 30 seconds. And there's a big difference in the product you use and the process you use. So yeah, the city manager runs the city. The council hires and manages the city manager. We've got to bridge that correlation there to get more out of our staff effectively and to do more with less so we are efficient with our tax dollars and how they're being used.
Tamika.
Yes, I believe that we can work more efficiently. Lot in the labor field right now, a lot of companies are cutting down their staff, work less, work them harder, save more money. The city, like Clark said, they've shown us that they can do the same thing. It hasn't been more efficient. Our roads aren't saying they are. So the efficiency is, if we're going to work harder with less manpower, then we also need to invest in better materials with our tax dollars. Instead of putting Band-Aids and temporary fixes, we need more long-term satisfaction and results, because that's what I hear that the people want. And I know my pocketbook is tired of repairing my car from bad road work. Thank you.
Hannah, same question.
Yes, we can be more efficient, but we also need to make sure that we are supporting the programs that are doing so much to support us. We need to make sure that we are supporting things like the Complete Streets program, where we are going through systematically using the data, weaponizing that data, and making sure that we are investing in smart ways across our community to improve roads for all. But we need to do so in a way that we recognize that the people who are doing this hard work need our support. They get pay raises every year because with every year they have more experience and they do become more valuable to our community. So just as we do need to make sure that they are doing their jobs as efficient as possible, because that is our money, we need to make sure that we are doing what we can to support them as well.
Lucas?
For me, this is an issue where transparency creates a lot of clarity on it. I live on 17th Street, which has been a great pothole lane for a while. And they decided to do a mill and overlay, and I cried because I was going to have to deal with 3 months of construction. And they finished it so quickly, I didn't think the city of Topeka had actually done the project. And for me, I see projects like that, and then I see projects that linger and are redone and broken. And I know that they both exist, and that the city of Topeka did both of them, but we don't have a conversation about why one went so much faster and worked so much better than the other one did. And so creating that conversation and making sure that we're having dialogue, I do think that we can be more efficient. I think that right now we've got some projects that do really well and some that don't, but we aren't critically reviewing them to make sure that we're moving towards that most efficient point, and that I do think we can get there.
Okay. I think we got time for one more question, so I'm gonna pick this one. It's an East Side issue, so we'll see what your knowledge is of East Side issues. This person is asking about blight at 6th and California. Sorry, 29th in California. I apologize. And so the question is, do you favor a turnpike entry exit on 29th to open up business on the east side? Hannah, go ahead.
It would be wonderful to have a turnpike exit right there. That is dealing with also federal issues and state issues. And so that would be something where you would have to have candidates and city council people elected that could work with other levels of government. We want to make sure that we are reinvesting in these areas because they are very valuable to the people who are there. We don't want businesses to dry up and leave those with homes in devalued areas. And so while it's very important to go ahead and look at all of the options open to us, it's also good to recognize that there are definitely other levels of government involved in this specific case. If that doesn't work out, then we would need to look at some other tools we could use to go ahead and make this area a flourishing commercial area again. Thanks.
Lucas, same question.
Going back to earlier when I said that TIFs are a tool that can be used for good things and bad things, I think that turnpike exits for economic development follow that same pattern. There have been comments that I've heard over the past couple years about trying to close the downtown corridor of traffic because they thought that the highway was a negative for the business in downtown. And while I'm not entirely sure that I buy that argument yet, a lot of the research out there on how highways affect city economies and the overall health of the city has me concerned that using the highway as a tool for economic development is just going to hurt the city in 20 to 30 years while we might see some short-term growth. So while I do think that 29th in California needs blight addressed, I think that this might be a situation where we need to find a different tool. I'm not entirely opposed to the idea, but I'd have to go do some more reading on whether or not it will have long-term negative ramifications.
Will, same question.
I don't support a turnpike exit, but here's what I support. I support paying off the turnpike debt at the state level finally like they originally intended and making the Kansas Turnpike a free interstate. That's what they originally intended. And Topeka is a unique city because we don't have a full interstate loop around our city. And that is really hurting the east side of Topeka. And if we did have access to where people could get to this side of town much quicker, it would stimulate our economy over here, and I really think it would revitalize our entire city. You know, other than merging city and county government, that may be the most transformational thing we could do. It would give us free transit to Wichita and Kansas City, which are our two largest partners in the state, and it would completely change this side of town. I am in favor of that, and I think we need to work with the state and push the state to do that.
Tamika, same question.
It was a good idea. I don't think it's the best idea. There's a shopping center located there. We also know that we're experiencing a food shortage in the city of Topeka. How about we look at ways to bring about a shopping center with a full-service grocery store instead of having those that come in and leave. They close down, and all there's left there is Dillon's grocery store. There's a lot of seniors in that area. There's a lot of low-income families in that area. Having a lower cost, accessible grocery mart and develop that shopping center is a lot better way to utilize that area than putting a turnpike. I wouldn't know that it would be a good location at that intersection to put a turnpike.
Clark, same question about the 29th in California.
I'll address this differently. You all have two city council people, I think, kind of overlap into this area, Mike Padilla and Tony Emerson. My answer to you is, what does the community want? And then from what the community wants, we need to assess the quality of that perspective and come back to the community and say, that works, but doesn't work there, works over here, and what the costs are and the dynamics. Because it's not my decision as a city council member or your city council rep, it's your decision. And it's incumbent upon us, through the city council and leadership, to have the dialogue of what it means to you, what Will alluded to as far as economic growth, et cetera. And are those things that impact you positively that you're comfortable with? So in my opinion, the decision, I would vote for it. If this community said it's something you want and we know it's the right reason, then that's where I would be.
Okay, we're now to closing statements. We're going to allow 90 seconds. We've got time for each of them to make their call for votes or whatever they want to do. I'm going to go in opposite order of how we started. So, on the openings, Will, you're up first.
All right. Hey, it's been a pleasure to be here tonight, and I hope you all get out and vote and encourage your friends to vote, your family to vote. Local elections are generally low turnout. It's very important that you voice the direction of the future of our city. Topeka, we're facing a stagnant economy. We've had a declining population. Really, this comes down to quality of life issues. I've lived in some of the most amazing places in the world, besides Kansas, the bottom of the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone Glacier, all these places, and yet I chose to come back here because here is home. The great thing that Topeka has going for it is it can be a great home for people. It can be a great place to begin a career, to start your own business, to raise a family, and yet we have crumbling neighborhoods. We have high crime in many areas of our town, and people don't feel safe here. They don't feel comfortable in many of our neighborhoods, and until we change that, the decline is going to continue, the stagnation is going to continue. So we need to fight the crime. We need to rebuild our neighborhoods. It's great to have a nice downtown, but until your neighborhoods are strong, people won't move here and people won't stay here. And this is a huge issue in District 2, in North Topeka, in Oakland, and East Topeka. So quality of life is a big deal. You know, I've worked in parks and recreation quite a bit. I've worked for the county. Parks are a big issue. I think we can partner with the county to do some really cool things in parks. They've made some mistakes as far as, I apologize for that.
Go ahead. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Right. Tamika.
Topeka and Highcrest, NIA, thank you so much for the invite. It's always a pleasure to be able to come and speak to diverse groups of people. Everyone thinks different. If we didn't, we'd all be the same, and then there would be no world. I want everyone to get out and vote November 5th. Yes, everyone says who's this and who's that? Everyone has different backgrounds. Everyone has different lifestyles. I face a lot of challenges, but I have survived those challenges just like I've survived growing up in a diverse area of adoption. I want to see more inclusion with our LGBT community. I want to see more inclusion with our Native Americans. I want to see more inclusion in our African Americans and taking a part of what happens inside their city. They pay taxes, they vote, they work. They have a right to have that voice in what goes on in our cities. I want to be the person to bring a different face to the table, a different energy that is lacking. I might not have a lot of political experience and background, but I'm determined to learn, and I want to develop with those that have like interests, and we can conversate to make decisions to turn the city around. I'm excited for Momentum 2022. I am here to do the work. I'm determined to do the work. I have displayed that determination by being a single parent, being gainfully employed, doing what I need to do, meeting people where they're at, and I've had fun doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah?
Thank you all for having us and being invested in our city government. It is so important to make sure that you're involved at this level, and it's very admirable that you take the time to not only know about your district, but other districts, because as I mentioned earlier, there is no city council member at large. The closest thing we have to that is the mayor, and she does do a great job at trying to represent the entire city, but we need to do that on the city council level as well. And so thank you for taking the time to get to know us a little bit better. I'm really excited to see where Topeka can go, because I grew up here, I graduated from Topeka High, and I love this community dearly. And we have so much potential and room for growth. If we take the time to invest in all of us, then we will be able to go forward as a community that's stronger, that's more vibrant, that's more inclusive, and able to really make its mark as we go into this new decade. I am excited to work with people across the board, to talk to you, to get to know your issues, to research them, as we mentioned, and make sure that we're headed in a way that we all want to go. My name is Hannah Nager. If you have any friends in District 6, please encourage them to vote. I have a certain way I would like them to vote, but make sure that they do get out and vote, and together we can make Topeka a better place. Thank you again.
Thank you. Lucas?
One of the things that we like to say in my poli-sci classes is that the biggest voting block is the people who don't show up to the polls, because the single largest demographic of people who don't vote outweighs everything else. So thank you for being engaged. I cannot stress that enough. My heart is doing little dances. But we really don't have enough time to do any of these issues justice. My wife will tell you that I absolutely never shut up talking about policy. So if you've got any questions about things that we didn't talk about here, I'd encourage you to reach out to any and all of us, because I'm sure that we would all love to just tell you more about economic development policy and keep you up at night. But the economic policy might put you to sleep. That's it. I really thank you for having us all. I think that this has been a very great campaign, and I think that we are all excited to see how November 5th goes. So, thanks.
Okay. Clark?
Well, I'll thank you all also, and I'd like to tell the officer that's here, we thank you for your service and appreciate you being a part of this. Topeka is on the precipice of truly greatness, something that it can be very special not only to us, but can become the centerpiece of Kansas, which we should be. We want to work on inclusion, not exclusion. We want to work on diversity, not adversity. We want to become a community that realizes we're all connected at the hip. What happens on the east side affects the west side, north, south, and so forth. We are a community of one, and we need to get that together and become one. My wife is from here. We moved back here for a reason. This is a wonderful place to be, and we're going to continue to move it in the right direction with the right leadership moving into this election. Remember that quality of life and quality of place mean different things to different generations. It's not all about millennials. It's not all about seniors. It's about between the millennials and the seniors and every age group in between. And we need to pay attention to all of us and get all of us engaged in this conversation, because this city has the potential to be just absolutely wonderful. And I'll end with this, in the words of a great lady: there's no place like home. Thank you all.
Let's give our candidates a big hand.